Hey everyone, welcome to this brand new episode of Freedoms. In today's episode, we're very lucky to have Dr. King Langdon. She is from Coologics and she just raised a seed of $3 million. Congrats on that, Kim. How do you feel about that today?
I feel great, and we're spending it faster than I thought we um, no, I don't and in case our investors are listening, no, we're being very prudent. I basically have been at this Coologics for we're only 6 years old technically, but I've been working on this project for almost 15 years.
Wow.
So, really bootstrapped it with my own money. Our intellectual property attorney came on board for an equity stake because these patents office actions are very expensive. So, I was getting tired of $5,000 going out the door every 3 months, and I knew I had to get a patent because of the device and because that's how you best raise money. In fact,
Right.
throughout this process, one of the main problems for to raise money, the first one was I think people were skeptical that this device actually worked. The second one was that we didn't have intellectual property. We didn't have a patent granted. So we did finally get that in 2020. So that's what I've been doing for 15 years. I practiced medicine for OB-GYN for 19 years. About the time when 2 years before I left medicine, I kind of stumbled upon my discovery by accident because I did not intend to be an entrepreneur. I call myself the reluctant entrepreneur, but yeah, I'm I'm the only one that can do this because, obviously to have a drug-free solution for women who are suffering is just unbelievable because right now we're living in a drugged economy. Everything's a drug or a vaccine,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people are tired of it. There's side effects with drugs. Drugs don't work very well. Again, I did not set out to solve this problem. I was trying to solve a problem I had, and I didn't have any drugs and I was at home. So I like, well, what can I do? What can I do? And I used to
That sounds impossible, by the way. The way that you said it, it sounds like you were on Mission Impossible, literally.
I can't begin to explain this journey and to give it justice, but I'll do the best I can. So,
Yeah, and before we even jump in, I'm just curious, before you were an entrepreneur, can you tell the audience who were you back in the days before even having this entrepreneurial mindset?
well, I'll tell you what, when I went to college, I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I was on a swimming scholarship, so all the labs were at the time when the swim practice was. So I'm like, well, let me do something else and, have a life and whatnot. And then I went out and worked for a while for an airline, actually.
Oh,
And while I was working for an airline, it was a startup company also, and it went out of business. But I left
right.
before it went out of business, and I sold my stock before it went out of business. Um, and at that time, I started to take pre-vet courses. Then I met my husband to be, and he's a lawyer, so they always have better ideas. And he said, "Well, why don't you apply to medical school too?" And I said, "Oh, okay." And it turned out that was actually the best choice
Hmm,
because even though I loved animals, I would have been the poorest veterinarian around because I would never be able to euthanize anything.
hmm,
I would probably
right.
take it home and try to make it better. So I chose
I love
medicine,
that.
and then I think I chose obstetrics and gynecology. So I went to Ohio State University Medical School and then did my residency there as well in OB-GYN. But I think I chose OB-GYN just because I'm a woman, I'm interested in women's health. I had some issues of my own that I was, trying to figure out why I kept getting these infections. So obviously God sent those infections to me so that I could solve this very important problem. I really believe every step of the way I've been guided. I've been basically, at at stages in my life that I thought I was just not gonna be able to continue this process
Mm.
because it was so expensive.
That's important to
Miraculous things
realize.
happened, like I found my intellectual property attorney. But
Wow.
did I go back far enough for you?
This is definitely far enough. And
That's fun.
if I was a fly on the wall, when you were even younger, how would you describe yourself? What type of hobbies did you have back in the days? Because I understand that you're of a certain age, and most people listening in, they're young, right? Like they're entrepreneurs that start businesses at 19, at 20, and you got your pre-seeds at a certain age. So this is extremely motivating for the audience, in my opinion, even for me. And maybe you could describe, like, back in the days, even before you set out on this journey, how
Sure.
was your life like? Yeah.
Well, I am one of 6 children. I'm the only girl. I had 4 older brothers, and let me tell you, that was quite an adventure. But I think it's because I had older brothers that I ended up joining the swim team at a very young age. And so my main hobby growing up was competitive swimming. And, you know, back in those days, the 1960s and 70s, there weren't a lot of girls in sports. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are. I mean, it's probably, 9 out of 10 girls are in sports now. I don't know what it is. But back then, it wasn't that common. But the community I lived in was very proactive for, girls in sports. I played softball, I played volleyball, I was a swimmer. And then I happened to be good enough in swimming to get, I won state meets, held records in the swimming, and I was always very competitive. But I'll tell you this: if you don't win in swimming, you quit. I wish I was better at something else besides swimming, but it just so happens I was good at swimming. And back then, there was something called Title IX. You've probably heard about it recently, but Title IX, I was in the late 60s, early 70s, but they never enforced Title IX until the late 70s. And so Title IX basically just said for every male scholarship in sports, you have to offer a female scholarship. So I was
Right.
one of 3 scholarship athletes at the University of Cincinnati, 3 swimmers, and then then we had a diver that was also. So we were kind of relegated to one little lane where there were 6 lanes to swim in. We got 1. The men got 5. The
Wow.
men didn't want us there. I'm telling you,
Interesting.
things were different back then.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I could tell you worse stories, but I won't. But I made it through and did really well. I became an All-American, 5-time All-American swimmer and 2-time
Wow.
MVP. As my mother
Okay.
always said,
Congrats on that.
Kimberly never does anything unless she wins. So, like,
I love
if I
that.
was not a good softball player, I quit. So I couldn't do that. So whatever I set out to do, my dad said I always would accomplish it, but I never talked very much about what I was going to do. So I was a very independent. My mom said I was very independent. I think I was maybe more mature for my age. I could dedicate myself to sports and academics. I finished 6th in my class of 240. That was one of my big accomplishments because I don't know why I thought that was a big accomplishment.
I love that. I love that.
I totally forgot about it till you asked me. So yeah, I mean, I had a great life. I mean, very solid family, and then went to college at University of Cincinnati. Then, like I said, I worked for an airline, and then decided to go into medicine. I think I'm just a very determined, competitive person. I don't give up. This would be a travesty if I gave up on this. I really feel like and I'm borrowing someone else's charm. So I really believe this is my purpose on the planet. And the only way to get to the point where I am now was to go through medicine, OB-GYN, and then practice as a physician for 19 years. But that's a hard road when you're a solo practitioner. And I had 2 small children. And I was missing a lot of their lives. So I said, you know what? I need to leave this and do something else. But before I was able to leave, I had to come up with something else. And it just so happens I stumbled upon my discovery, which turned out to be the basis for Coologics. The medical device I discovered or invented, so to speak, is called Bliss, but the company's name is Coologics. And this evolved over many periods of time. I have my final prototype. That was part of the mission, but I've spent a lot of my own money. I have not been paid for 15 years. I've been doing this
Wow.
all out of my out of the goodness of my heart, for
Very
once, right?
bootstrapped. Yeah,
Uh,
for womankind for sure. I'm
just
curious. Yeah,
go ahead.
at what part of the journey were you hit by this aha moment that, okay, that's it. I'm completely gonna sacrifice everything I got. I'm gonna go straight for this project. I'm gonna leave everything aside for Coologics. Like, when did that happen?
It happened when I realized I'm not Superwoman, okay? So I can't be a practicing physician, a mother who has 2 kids that do sports, and and start a company, okay? That's just asking a little too much. Since I've had really kind of burned out on the OB-GYN, I had to get up in the middle of the night. I delivered over 2,000 babies.
Wow.
The practice was flourishing, but we had a high overhead, and I just decided, you know, if I'm going to get out of medicine, let's get out and do something else. But I didn't know what I was going to do. So I asked for help. I said, God, please help me get out of medicine. And within 6 months, I conceived of my device quite by
Wow.
accident, trying to solve a health problem I had at home. And I had no drugs. So I'm very creative. I'm a creative problem solver. Most doctors are,
Yeah.
because that's what we do all the time, try to fix and solve problems. And so I was at my home and I decided, well, I tell my patients when they have this problem. By the way, the problem I had was a yeast infection, okay?
Right.
So,
Very prevalent
mhm,
in the world of women. It's super prevalent, right? Like,
yes,
I think what, like 30% of women go through this at some
yeah.
stages of their life. Yeah.
75% of women will have
75.
at least one in their lifetime. And
Wow.
then there's 15.5 million women in the US that have more than 3 outbreaks a year. So yeast infections are the second most common form of vaginitis. The bacterial form is a little bit more prevalent, but the bacterial vaginosis isn't as symptomatic. So like a yeast infection, if you want to understand a yeast infection, think about, have you ever had poison ivy?
Well, yeah, I remember. Yeah, yeah,
That's
I did.
exactly what it feels like, but it's in a very different area of the body than like your leg or your
Right,
arm. So
right,
it's
right.
very painful. It's very itchy. You really can't think or do much of anything else until you get rid of that problem. So
Oh, for
I
sure. And
used
I
to,
think it also affects, yeah, it affects a lot of relationships, right?
well,
Because,
yeah,
yeah, and I think it's a big taboo in relationships where people don't like to talk about it, yet it's present in, like you said, 75% of relationships. And I think a lot of women are afraid to discuss or even look for treatment, and it can impact or even lead to breakups in some cases. So yeah, what you're doing, this whole mission of yours is going to impact millions of lives, hundreds of millions of lives.
well,
Yeah.
yeah. And, times have changed, but it used to be when people got ill for whatever reason, a lot of times they were blamed for it. And then you start talking
Yeah.
about your private parts and it's just very embarrassing. So women didn't want to discuss it because they got judged, right?
Right. Right.
And, a lot of the doctors at the time in the OB-GYN field were males, and females, don't like to go to males. And now it's different. There's a lot more females OB-GYNs, but you're absolutely right. Everyone's like, oh, this is no big deal. It is a big deal because you can't go to work. You can
Yeah.
hardly walk. You certainly can't have sex. And you don't want to
Exactly.
tell your significant other why. So my joke has always been, you hear the word, honey, I have a headache, not tonight, it's really, she has a yeast infection.
Right. I love
Uh,
that. Oh my god.
so that's code. Yeah. Headaches code for yeast infection.
Well, for the listeners out there, listen in because this is basically decoding the female logic and their subtle language there. So yeah.
Eh, yeah. And, there's a lot of anxiety and depression that results with people who get
Yes.
chronic
Yeah.
cases. So this is no small matter. It is debilitating. And the other thing about these infections is, men may shrug and say, oh, big deal, but bacterial vaginosis and yeast infections are linked to preterm births. and their
Right.
inflammation is also linked. So basically, Coologics will be addressing the three largest markets in OB-GYN with one device. I guess I can show it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. This is it. Yeah. And can you please explain to the viewers or investors potentially, or even clients that could be watching approximately how does it work? Or if, of course, without spilling all the secrets, because it's probably patented, but just, the basics
Yeah.
of what is this device? Yeah.
So yeast is a fungus, which is different than a bacteria, and it lives in two different forms. It lives in the dormant bud form, and then when it causes an infection, it turns into a hyphae. The hyphae act like roots and invade the tissue. We don't know why hyphae develop, but it tends to be a change in the environment. The pH changes, the temperature changes, the glucose level changes, antibiotic exposure. So these hyphae dig into the tissue like roots do into the ground, and that triggers the immune response. And the immune response is what drives most of the symptoms. These little white blood cells come out and they're like, okay, let's fight the fungus, but they're totally ineffective and they die. And once they die, they release their chemicals, and those chemicals contribute to the very characteristic terribly itchy, painful condition that I describe as, poison ivy for any other body part. And so then we try to, and then biofilms form, and that's one reason why drugs don't work very well. It turns out, with lots and lots of research that I did, that when microbiologists want to turn the hyphae back into the bud, they simply turn down the temperature to 86 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees Celsius, and it has to turn back to the bud. It doesn't have a choice. When I was in training, I thought once it turned to the hyphae, it never went back. And I thought once it turned to the hyphae, you had to kill it. But it turns out you don't have to kill it. You can just make it go back to the bud, and then it just lives asymptomatically until there's another trigger. And triggers can be like the same trigger. So yeast lives on your skin, my skin, in our mouths, intestines, and whatnot. And it doesn't do anything. It's just part of the healthy microbiome. But it can act up when the environment changes. So this device provides enough cooling to make it go back to the bud. And then the cooling is also so soothing that it takes care of the itching, the burning, the swelling, and the pain. So we're actually targeting the main drivers of the infection, which is the inflammation, and reversing the hyphae back to the bud. So those are the two primary mechanisms of action. There's two others we think we can prove, but we don't have to prove them. But we think we're preserving the good bacteria and breaking up biofilms, but I haven't proven that definitively yet.
Yeah, and to the founders watching that are also in the medical sphere and industry, would you have some tips or advice to share when you're, going after investors, the way that you present this type of super niche product that can revolutionize the world? Like, what was your approach that convinced investors to lean in and listen and have letter of intents and all that?
Well, I've been through at least 1,000 slide decks.
Wow.
I just keep
Jesus.
I mean, every time you present, you learn. Someone's always going to ask you a question you didn't think of. So by the time we had the final one that got the investors, we actually had scored 65 out of 65 on some AI tool for having all the things needed in a slide deck.
Wow.
Well, it's about 50 slides long, all told.
That's long. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, we answered every question somebody could ask, but then there's always an investor that comes up with some obscure little whatever, and
Detail,
we
right? Like
generally
that
can
that you never
answer it.
thought of. Yeah.
But I think what really tipped the scale was when I finally, for the longest time, I was just talking about yeast infections, and I didn't talk about bacterial vaginosis, and I didn't talk about preterm birth. But once people learn that these two infections aren't just little nuisances that women should just forget about, that they're actually linked to deadly conditions such as preterm birth. And by the way, I had a preterm birth.
Oh,
He
wow.
is fine, but many of these babies, 50% of these babies that are born premature die. Okay? And before they die, they're in the NICU and they're, a lot of things are done to them. So it's a very sad day, and we've done nothing in medicine to prevent these from occurring. We have nothing that we can offer the patient to stop it. We have no treatment modalities. And this has been a terrible problem. 10% of pregnancies are affected by preterm births, and that's rising. And about 1 million babies die each year in the world. So
Wow.
when you start, because that was sort of my thing, I could sort of get the feeling like, oh, well, this isn't a serious condition. This vaginitis, this isn't serious. It's like, yes, it is. If you look at the studies, it is linked to preterm birth. So I think that's where people started seeing the value of this investment. Not to mention, it's the 3 largest markets in OB-GYN. Um, so vaginitis is the most common reason a woman sees her OB-GYN. This device treats 90% of those types. And then, of course, the preterm birth market, the preterm birth problem is the largest problem in obstetrics. So, I mean, even if I don't even have to give people numbers. I started out with numbers, the market, the TAM, SAM, and SOM and whatnot. But finally, I just started saying, hey, look, let's just get to the point. We have the 3 biggest markets with 1 patent device. Okay, and
Yeah.
we're only asking for 1.5 million to get through a clinical trial and FDA clearance. However,
Okay.
we oversubscribed it because once the lead investor came in, all the people that were sort of on the fence said, "Oh, okay, now we'll get on board." So
That's
actually,
amazing.
it did me a disfavor because the valuation was set for the 1.5. So I ended up diluting myself more, but that it
Hmm.
was more important to get the money and get as much money as we could than quibble over a valuation, which after the clinical trial, it's going to shoot up dramatically, and then after FDA clearance as well. We have human data, we have published human and mouse data, but it wasn't enough to submit for FDA clearance. So the seed money was mainly just to get through FDA clearance, and we'll raise more money in a Series A next year and do a limited commercial launch in 3 major cities in the United States. It is a prescription, so the path to market's pretty well established. The drug reps call on practices, device reps call on practices, and things like that. So I may have
Yeah,
gotten
and
way ahead of that question, but so I'll stop there.
I love it. And can you tell the viewers what is your secret to your energy? I mean, at this point, you're up against the odds, right? Like, we're talking about 1 out of 10 founders that actually get investment. They're women, right? And the rest, the odds are so against women right now in venture capital. Plus the fact that you have a certain age. So mostly it's, younger entrepreneurs from Harvard that get funded in YC and all that. But what was your secret, in your opinion, that got you through
I'm
this most
stubborn.
difficult? Yeah. I love that.
I guess it's called perseverance, but the point is there was no way I was gonna stop. The only way I'm gonna stop is if I die. I mean, because this has to be on the market. This is my purpose on the planet. Every time I thought I was gonna have to give up, some life jacket was thrown at me, like my IP attorney
Can
came
you
on board
unpack
for
that? I'm
equity.
just really curious. Yeah. Can you unpack, like, the, life jacket moments that you had, which were almost deadly to your journey?
The biggest one was the intellectual property and not being, I was on a limited budget. I had budgeted to take care of myself for the rest of my life, but I hadn't anticipated that it was going to take so long to get this product funded and on the market. So the 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 funds were dwindling. Fortunately, I have a nice ex-husband and he invested as well. He was also
Oh,
on the
nice.
board. Um, and the intellectual property, that was probably from his work, probably a good 500,000 that he
Wow.
probably put forth in that. So he does own, 5% of the company, and he's a great IP attorney and a great person. Dale Hunt, if you need a good IP attorney,
There you go.
he's wonderful. He's a PhD in molecular biology and then a law degree from Berkeley. So they don't get any
Okay.
smarter than that.
Yeah, and, he's also in Cincinnati? Does he still
No,
help
he's
out
in San
founders? Yeah.
Diego.
San Diego. Okay, got it, got it.
Yeah. What I learned with IP attorneys, if you're in the healthcare, get somebody that has a PhD or an MD, because if you don't have a scientific background, they don't know what they're doing. I hate to say that, but
I
that's what I
think,
find
yeah, it's
true.
important, yeah, to lay it out as it is. And do you remember how many no's did you receive just to finally get your yeses?
I think
Approximately.
most people liked it, but they always wanted me to jump through another hoop. They're like,
Uh-huh.
okay, come back when you get more human data. Come back when you get the IP. And then we get the mouse data, and the mouse data is very important because the drugs on the market flunk the mouse model. So there's no
Right.
published data about the drugs in the mouse model, but we got published data. That is huge, because we showed statistically significant decrease in the infection and the inflammation. So once you get that, and we had some human data, then people once you get human data, then they want more human data. They're like, "We'll get more." It's like, I have
Never ending.
jumped through every hoop every investor has asked me to. And yet you still then what you get about at this stage, come back when you have FDA clearance. That's always the next statement. I go, "Well, I need money to get to that point, you know?" And
Right.
I felt like we had de-risked it substantially, way beyond what other companies at much earlier stages. I mean, I'd see people get $10 million for a sketch on a napkin. So,
Right.
I was like, "What's wrong with me?" And so my latest excuse is that, well, number 1, I'm a woman. Number 2, I'm a doctor. Nobody thinks doctors are good business people. And I'm talking about the vagina to men who don't want to hear that word
Right,
at
right,
all.
right, right.
I
It's
mean,
definitely going against the odds. Like, I think the market is so big that they just can't ignore it, right? Like, we're talking about a TAM that is just so disruptable at this point because it's very pharmaceutical driven, and I understand that your offer is drug free.
it's completely drug free and it happens to be faster and more effective than the drugs. The drugs are failing 50% of the time, 30 to 50% of the time. We are showing almost 100% efficacy. So even if we were a drug, wouldn't you want a better drug than a worse drug? I mean, but we're not a drug. And then we offer immediate symptom relief, something no drug can do. So we have no side effects. We have no risk at all. It's completely safe. It's not gonna mess up your microbiome, and it works better than a drug. So, it only has to be used 30 minutes twice a day for 2 days, maybe even less, but we'll be able to tell more with the clinical trial. So, I might have gone off on a tangent there, but I'm not sure.
No, I love it. Do you remember the most difficult part before the funds hit your bank account? Like, uh, maybe you have some anecdotes to share with fellow founders that are also currently raising. What were your major downfalls, or even days where you thought, like, okay, this is not going to work. I'm just going to give up. Maybe you have some to share regarding that?
Well, I just tried to learn from each experience. There's always the smartest guy in the room, right? So, I just, uh, took it in stride and said, "Okay, well, now I know for next time I gotta have this question answered." So, I really was never contemplating stopping, okay? So, I never got to that point because someone else is running this show. I'm just the human on earth, you know, who's carrying out the mission. But, I I know a lot of investors talk about the team, and my team was always a virtual team. We were all just consultants. And I'm like, I don't need to pay people a bunch of money to get it through the next stage. We can use consultants, we use fractional executive leadership. But I know a lot of the people that get funded have these really big teams. And I don't know how people do that. And unless you get funded right off the bat. So I won't be the CEO who does the commercialization. We will have to pay someone legitimate money to do the commercialization. I'm just the person that was willing to work for free for 15 years because I believed in it. And, maybe I'm just, I don't know. This must be something wrong with me.
No, I think there's nothing wrong with you. You're just amazing. And do you have an approximate number on the number of no's that you got just to finally get
All
the
the
yes? Was
no.
it like,
See,
yeah,
I didn't answer your question, right?
it's all good. I'm just curious. I'm just curious. Sometimes people say like 150, 10,
I
0.
mean,
Like, I'm just
I
curious.
could easily say 10 a year, so I could say
Okay.
150,
Okay. Wow. So 150 no's. I think
probably more. See, a lot of times I didn't even ask because I got the feedback that I needed to do more work. So it would be like you'd pitch and then it'd be like, oh, come back when you have this. So when we got the patents in 2020, that's when things really picked up. And when we got the mouse data, and then we got a second set of human data. And that all happened in 2020, 2021. But before that, I think people just saw it as too risky.
yeah, and just if we step back for a second and think about the entrepreneurs that give up after 20 no's or 30 no's, if you wait for 150 no's, you might have that 3 million in the bank account. That's the power of persistence, and most people just forget that they have that.
I just knew I was right. Like, I think the skepticism is what gets the investors. And if there was any chance that I didn't believe 100% that this worked because I tried it on myself, my daughter, we've shown it all works. If I hadn't believed 100%, I probably wouldn't have done it. So I think the people that give up are probably giving up because they really don't really believe in it or they don't believe in themselves. So,
That's powerful. That's really powerful. I think it's extremely important to point this out. Like a lot of founders, they go through this moment, and maybe that it's just not powerful enough to keep on going, and then they give up. But this is crazy stuff, right? Like I'm just curious. Do you remember the moment that the funds arrived at your bank? How did you celebrate? Where were you? Can you describe a little bit that day when you spotted, the 3 million sitting in your bank now?
it must be my age or something. It was just sort of like I didn't believe it. Even I kept being told it was going to be March 31st. I'm like, I'll believe it when I see it. But it did come in, and then it's just like let's get to work. Let's move forward because we were kind of just treading water at that point. I really didn't go out and do anything exciting because this is my whole life. I mean, I told my kids were very happy because I saw they were so supportive through the years. I go, oh well, that investor wasn't interested, and they just shrugged. They never got upset. They never said do something else, mom. They always believed in me, and so even my son was like, oh, I'm gonna go out and start selling this, mom.
And do you remember, maybe people that didn't believe in you or organizations that didn't believe in you? Did it happen that they inflicted some sort of doubt in you, or it never happened to you? Like,
Yeah, I actually got more determined. I'm like, I'll
wow.
show you. You will be sorry someday.
Love
Okay,
it.
you'll be sorry you're not on our cap table. Bye
No,
bye.
no. No, this is great. This is great. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs need to have this type of energy, right? Like they think a no, it just means that okay, their idea is not validated by the market or something. But no, it's just that you're not talking with the right people, right? And
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's yeah.
It's just a matter of time. And I was a competitive swimmer. I lost. It didn't mean I stopped swimming. I mean, if you give up, you know, I mean, there are times I did say, God, if this is not going to work out, let me know now. Okay,
Right.
let's not drag this out.
I love that. And do you remember if you made any pivots during the innovative phase when, yeah, you were like thinking of going this way and then you changed something and you went in a completely different direction? Maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Yes, that's a very important one. We had a pre-sub meeting with the FDA. We were originally going to go OTC because I wanted this access to all women. I didn't want it to be under the doctor control. But when we talked to the FDA, they strongly recommended prescription first. And I was very disappointed, but it turned out to be the best pivot ever because the prescription market is a bigger market. Secondly, if you go over the counter, you still have to get the doctor's buy-in. So it makes more sense not to bypass the doctors, okay? You get their buy-in, they can invite the patient in, do the exam, collect their fee, write the prescription, or give or sell it to them from their office. So you've already got the doctors on board, they're seeing how great it's working. That's going to help get uh, payer coverage. And so that disappointment turned into the best thing that ever happened.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah,
I got to thank the FDA.
yeah. Well, this is what you've just mentioned is just gold because a lot of founders they have this fear of pivoting, right? Like they have these expectations, we need to go in one direction, but you've made the pivot and it paid off. So I think you should never be afraid of pivoting, not only once or twice or maybe a few times until the market is a fit and the offer is a fit, right?
Yeah. No, I think it had to take this long because now there's more women are CEOs. There's more focus on women's health. 10 years ago, none of this was happening. Even 5 years ago, it was just beginning.
Hmm.
So
And
I think
were there
this took this long because this was how it had to be to really be market ready, or the market be ready for it.
Right. And did you remember any like signals that you had that made it so it's super clear to you that okay, yeah, we should take another direction? Like what happened in your life that made you pivot?
Well, with in that regard, it was the FDA.
Right. Yeah. Mm.
I can't think of anything else because I was very focused on OTC for a good 10 years, and then it's 2022 when we first talked to them. They said, "Talk to the FDA before you submit." That's the biggest advice I can give. You need to get their feedback. If you don't, you will be sorry. I mean,
For
it
sure.
still may be hard to get clearance. We may still have some bumps, but we've talked to them now 3 times.
Okay. Yeah. And it's a hard process because it's very cumbersome, I guess, with all of the politics and logistics in the background. It's not an easy machine to push forward, right?
Exactly.
So I'm just curious, if you look back in time, would you change anything before you started so that you could get faster to the point of where you're at now? Like, what would you adjust in your life knowing what you know now?
It's really been a great 15 years because when things weren't progressing with the company or the project, I just spent more time with my children. And that was really one of the main motivators for me leaving medicine, is so that I could spend more time with them. So I've had the past 15 years, being able to do anything I want, whenever I want. So, and then when things pick up with the company and we're moving forward, then I focus on that. But there's really other than that, I'm just happy that I've made it this far and I'm not in a mental institution.
I love your dark humor. It's really cool. It's refreshing. And I'm just curious, was there like a book that influenced you, maybe a mindset change that you would recommend to other people that you've made to yourself in your life? Maybe like a morning routine or something that gives you so much energy in progressing in such a difficult environment right now.
I've just always been very able to self-direct. I can't think of any one thing. If I need to learn something, the internet's helped me. Just I can find the answers to anything I want. That's really one thing I noticed. If the internet hadn't been up, I never would have been able to do this because I was able to do all this research on PubMed without buying all the articles, right? So I could write my white papers and whatnot. So to me, just doing more writing, I'm like, "Oh, I'm not too bad a writer, but I don't like to do it." So, oh dear, I think, uh, I'm sorry, I have a 2 o'clock call.
Oh, don't worry. It's so good. This is Founder's Life. And quick question. If investors or potential clients are willing to reach out, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Kim at Coologics.com.
Awesome. Well, super appreciated. And everyone watching, if you found this episode valuable, feel free to subscribe, hit like or comment, and see you in the next episode. Cheers.
All right. Thank you. Have a
Bye
good
bye.
day.